Okay, the burnishing process actually burnishes the peg hole as well as the peg, so that there is almost a molecular bond between the peg and the peg box. I mean, that's the way I like to describe it. It's such a tight tolerance. Well, now we're ready to dome the pegs. So the simplest way to dome a peg is to take your sanding board with 80 grit paper, and while turning the peg, I'm trying to do this so you can see, but I'm turning the peg while sanding and putting a bevel on the end of it. Don't overdo it with the beveling. So we want it to be a gradual bevel. Oh, that looks pretty darn good. You can't really see how nicely domed that is, but that's nicely domed. And it gets even more, it gets better. Now I'm going to do the other 3 pegs, and again, you don't need to watch that. I'll get back to you when I'm finished. Micro mesh is just a super fine sandpaper, really. We're basically making a dome at the end of every peg, hence doming the pegs. So I go with progressively finer grits to get a nice polished surface. Which you don't need to see, so I'll join you in a few minutes. Okay, now we have our nicely domed pegs installed. So the next step is marking a little dot with a pencil where we're going to drill the hole for the strings. Make the dot just off center, a little bit closer to the button end of the peg. So more this way rather than dead center, but just a little bit. Except for the DNA pegs, it's probably a good idea, especially with gut strings, to make them right in the center. Because gut strings and imitation gut strings tend to be a little bit beefier. The part that goes into the peg hole. So I've marked the pegs, and I'm sure you cannot see the markings, but trust me, they're little pencil markings. So now I'm going to drill holes. Now I feel the need to tell you this because I believe myself to be a pretty smart person, and I've made the mistake before. Always take the pegs out before you drill holes through them, otherwise you will at one point or another end up with an extra hole going through your peg box. And before drilling the holes, you want to have a little starter notch. So I use a drill bit like this. which is also 1/16 of an inch, and where the holes are, I just kind of twirl it around a little bit. Otherwise, when you drill the hole, the drill is going to skate across the peg, thus ruining all the work you've done so far. So we'll drill ourselves our first hole. Second. As you might guess, the next step is reinstalling the pegs. So here we go. So now we have tapered domed pegs with holes in them for installing the strings. Now there's one more thing to do, and that's get those fine tuners off of the tailpiece. I don't think you need to see how that's done. It's pretty easy to do. Now it's time for the final stage, stringing the instrument. I think we mentioned earlier we're going to be using synthetic gut strings. These are strings that Meisel violin used to sell before their untimely demise, at least in the US. And it's a pretty nice imitation gut string. It sounds a lot like gut and acts a lot like gut, although more resistant to weather changes than real gut. Now we can get real gut strings. In fact, you'll see them listed on our online store pretty soon. But they're made by Pirastro and they're about 150 bucks. But these are going to do for now, and in fact, it takes gut strings about a week to break in. It takes these, about an hour to break in. So that's another reason for using these. Now, real gut strings are tied to, or traditional gut strings are tied to the tailpiece. These are ball-end strings, just like you're used to. So here's the finished product, and it doesn't look a whole lot different than a modern fiddle, except it's missing a chin rest and does not have fine tuners. So I'm guessing that you wouldn't mind hearing what this sounds like in the hands of a master.